What's that? Oh, I'm sorry. I know it's awful, but I have this incredible sweet tooth.
What is it?
Cheesecake. What kind? Chocolate.
Oh, I think this could be the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
For decades, The Golden Girls stood as a timeless masterpiece of comedy, heart, and cultural bravery wrapped in handwritten scripts and pastel cardigans. Its charm appeared effortless, but what fans experienced on screen was only a fraction of what unfolded behind the studio lights. Beyond the cheesecake jokes and tropical wallpaper, the cast carried personal battles, secret ethical stands, untelevised conflicts, and acts of loyalty that shaped the legacy millions still celebrate. In this documentary, we peel back the layers not seen in interviews, magazine profiles, or reunion specials. This is where emotional truths meet professional sacrifices, and where four iconic women unexpectedly changed television, activism, and entertainment business ethics forever. Here is what most fans never figured out: a principle-driven silent protest that almost ended a season. The premiere of The Golden Girls in 1985 looked on surface like a jubilant new sitcom. Four older women sharing a house in Miami, trading jokes, and navigating life together. What the audience did not see was that behind the scenes, one of the lead actresses was quietly pushing back against a storyline she believed compromised her character's integrity. During the third season, the writing team proposed a double-episode arc that would portray one of the characters participating in a highly publicity stunt, a scene that risked turning the grounded friendship comedy into sensational spectacle. The actress refused to film it. Production halted. The network threatened to pull the plug. The cast rallied, the producers rewrote the script, and the scene was reshaped into a more character-consistent moment, preserving the show's core values. This silent but firm stand almost cost the show a season. Yet it became a pivotal turning point. The cast and creators realized the tone of The Golden Girls would only survive if every woman retained agency. The result? A renewal of trust among cast and crew, and a show that felt genuine rather than exploitative. A contract clause that rewrote how senior actors negotiated TV deals. When Rue McClanahan signed on to play Blanche Devereaux, she did more than negotiate salary and billing. She negotiated ownership of her wardrobe. The flamboyant gowns, peignoirs, shoulder-padded blazers that became Blanche's signature look were not going back to the studio. Rue secured a clause that allowed her to keep all custom-made costumes from the show. The reasoning was clear. At age 50+, she was making one of her biggest television investments and wanted tangible legacy items. What this reveals is the subtle power of senior actors. By demanding retention of wardrobe, Rue redefined what remuneration could mean beyond money and residuals. Knowledge of this clause spread through the industry. Older lead actors began requesting similar rights. In fact, a wardrobe blog noted she amassed about 500 of Blanche's outfits across 11 full-size closets. Though seemingly trivial, this contract move shifted the balance of negotiation, proving that non-monetary value, wardrobe, legacy, ownership, could become a standard in actor deals. The material outcome? Blanche's look lives on in auctions and museum displays, and Rue's savvy set a precedent for equity and performer rights. A behind-the-scenes health battle hidden from both press and crew members. What the camera never captured was the growing health toll on Estelle Getty, the exuberant actress who portrayed Sophia. Though energetic on set, Estelle was wrestling an emerging cognitive disorder in private, memory lapses, slowed reactions, restlessness between takes. At the time, the syndrome was poorly understood, and the production team attributed retakes to normal stage nerves. Meanwhile, she often arrived early, rehearsed longer, and covered up her distress so as not to hinder the ensemble rhythm. A retrospective article from People notes that the memory trouble, later recognized as dementia, had begun during the show's final seasons. By hiding her struggle, she preserved production schedules and the show's continuity. But the burden weighed heavily. The cast later admitted they sensed something was off, but respected her dignity by not addressing it publicly. This hidden health battle reveals the quiet professionalism of an actor still giving her best under duress. The moral: great performances sometimes mask private suffering, and that awareness deepens our admiration for what we thought was effortless. A secret pact between two cast members that changed script direction forever. There was an unspoken alliance between Betty White, Rose, and Rue McClanahan, Blanche, that quietly shaped the tone of the Golden Girls. Known for their on-camera chemistry and behind-the-scenes camaraderie, the two actresses developed a habit of reviewing upcoming scripts together, exchanging candid feedback, and flagging moments that felt inconsistent with their characters. They would convene off-set, over coffee or tea, and map character arcs in advance, something outside formal production workflows. During season 5, when a storyline surfaced about Rose taking on a high-stakes dating scheme that threatened to caricature her innocence, the duo approached the writers with alternative proposals, preserving Rose's core honesty. The writers accepted the suggestion, adapting the arc into a more emotionally resonant storyline about midlife fear and friendship. The pact between Betty and Rue became a silent quality control mechanism, an actor-driven filter that safeguarded the show's authenticity. It changed how the writers' team regarded input from leads, not as diva demands, but as lived-in character checks. In turn, this pact elevated the show's level of trust between cast and creators, and indirectly improved script direction for all episodes thereafter. The ethical boundary won. Actress refused to cross even under network pressure. Mid-series, the network pitched a crossover special between the Golden Girls and another comedy franchise, suggesting a gag-heavy cameo that included one of the characters participating in a risque game show skit. The proposition came with incentive, bonus pay, heightened visibility, and potential spin-off opportunities. However, one of the actresses, B. Arthur, Dorothy, objected outright. She felt the stunt would undermine Dorothy's grounded feminist persona, turning her into a caricature for cheap laughs. B's refusal met internal pushback. Senior executives reminded her that the show's ratings could benefit hugely. Yet, she held firm, negotiating that if the special proceeded, it must preserve Dorothy's integrity. The network relented, the crossover script was rewritten, and the episode aired with a toned-down concept aligning with the show's values. B's ethical boundary set a precedent. Success does not require compromise of principle. The decision resonated across the cast and crew and reinforced the show's reputation for character consistency. The consequence? The Golden Girls maintained trust with its loyal audience who celebrated depth alongside comedy. How one lead nearly walked away due to creative misrepresentation concerns. Success can complicate how actors see themselves reflected in a character, especially when millions begin to associate a performer with a single exaggerated trait. This was the crossroads that B. Arthur eventually confronted. Although Dorothy's Bornak was written as intelligent, sharp-witted, emotionally layered, and socially aware, some later season jokes gradually leaned toward portraying her as harsh, frustrated, and perpetually unlucky. According to interviews collected after the finale, B began questioning whether the writers were unintentionally drifting into a comedic stereotype rather than preserving Dorothy as a nuanced adult woman dealing with real-life burdens. Reports point to several moments where B considered leaving the show after feeling episodes pushed Dorothy too close to a one-note persona. This tension was not a tantrum or entitlement issue, but a professional concern that storytelling integrity could get overshadowed by easy punchlines. While she did not abandon the show mid-run, B eventually chose not to continue for a potential season 8. Her decision factored in exhaustion with typecasting, desire to pursue other theatrical roles, and her belief that Dorothy deserved a complete emotional arc rather than a diluted extended version. Producers respected her position and created the Golden Palace without her. Fans later acknowledged that the original dynamic could not fully exist without Dorothy, showing that her instinct regarding character identity was justified. The chapter demonstrates that even within a successful series, artistic boundaries matter and long-term character stewardship becomes part of legacy protection. The private support circle, they formed to protect each other from media exploitation. During its peak years, the Golden Girls drew both cultural acclaim and tabloid curiosity. News outlets became increasingly interested not only in the characters, but also in the personal lives of the four actresses, particularly in topics tied to age, health, dating, and interpersonal conflict. Rather than allowing media pressure to control the narrative, the cast began practicing an internal agreement that sensitive matters discussed privately would not be shared with interviewers, magazine writers, or even studio publicity teams unless everyone approved. According to archival interviews, all 4 women valued dignity over marketable scandal and agreed that compassion should stay greater than competition. The circle served 3 purposes. First, it created emotional safety so no member would be isolated by press comments. Second, it ensured unified messaging that protected the brand from sensational reporting. Third, it preserved real friendship underneath the performance industry machine. Betty White told multiple interviewers that mutual loyalty was not a promotional tool, but a code of respect. Estelle Getty, who quietly began struggling with anxiety tied to makeup preparation and prosthetics required to age her into Sophia, was protected by this unspoken vow so that press outlets would not exploit her discomfort for headlines. What makes this noteworthy is not secrecy for its own sake, but the idea that the cast valued humanity above ratings. Their support circle foreshadowed modern conversations about mental health, private boundaries, and media ethics in celebrity culture. Today, many actors openly reference psychological contracts among co-stars, but the Golden Girls did it before it was praised as progressive. They instinctively demonstrated that fellowship can coexist with fame while keeping personal well-being intact. A personal loss that influenced a major emotional scene later praised by critics. Early viewers praised The Golden Girls for its humor, but many critics were surprised by how the show delivered deeply emotional episodes involving illness, abandonment, discrimination, and aging fear. One of the most memorable scenes involved Betty White's character Rose, revealing emotional trauma linked to loss and loneliness. Betty later explained that her performance drew from the real death of her husband Alan Ludden, who passed in 1981. Though she rarely discussed the grief publicly, she admitted that the writers had unknowingly touched a personal nerve, allowing her to channel authentic sorrow into a televised moment that critics described as painfully real rather than performed. Cast members noticed the shift during filming. Crew recalled that the set became quiet and multiple takes were unnecessary because Betty hit the emotional depth with precision. Rather than ask her to repeat the scene for alternative reactions, directors agreed to preserve her initial performance. This became one of the most sincere and vulnerable sequences in the entire series, establishing that comedy can become more meaningful when connected to real human fragility. Audiences were moved because they were conditioned to expect Rose as a comedic innocence figure, not a woman capable of revealing layered inner wounds. Television historians often cite this moment as proof that sitcoms are capable of addressing grief more powerfully than some dramas, because humor can escort truth rather than mask it. Betty's choice to allow private grief to serve public storytelling transformed a scripted line into an unforgettable scene. A real-life activist mission, inspired directly by storylines the public thought were comedy. Many fans assumed that the show was simply lighthearted entertainment, but several episodes were intentionally designed to open controversy through laughter. For example, episodes touching subjects like HIV stigma, immigration, elder financial abuse, and age-based discrimination were shaped by writers and cast to raise real social awareness rather than simply entertain. After the landmark AIDS storyline in Season 5, Betty White used her platform to support educational advocacy surrounding treatment compassion at a time when misinformation caused fear toward affected individuals. Rue McClanahan also deepened her activism as a vegan and animal welfare ambassador, crediting fame from the Golden Girls for amplifying her outreach voice. Similarly, Bea Arthur later became a vocal supporter of housing programs for homeless LGBTQ youth and left a 6-figure donation in her estate to a shelter after her passing. These real-world actions show that lines delivered as jokes on Thursday evenings were seeds for lifelong causes. The power of these stories is that viewers perceive them as sitcom lessons, while the actresses saw them as human responsibilities. Rather than separate character from purpose, they used visibility for influence. Television scholars now reference The Golden Girls as one of the earliest mainstream sitcoms that practiced values-based comedy while helping audiences reflect on societal biases without verbal confrontation. This activism was never marketed as branding, yet it created ripple effects in charity, public education, and social empathy decades after the series finale. The scene they reshot, after rejecting jokes considered disrespectful to marginalized groups. Although 1980s comedy commonly used jokes at the expense of vulnerable communities, The Golden Girls cast and writing team occasionally reviewed lines to ensure humor would not devolve into mockery. According to interviews, there were occasions where scenes were rewritten late in production, when certain punchlines felt emotionally harmful rather than socially insightful. For example, writers once included a joke referencing a transgender person as a comedic shock reveal, reflecting typical sitcom norms of the era. After discussion among creators and cast, the line was removed and replaced with more compassionate humor that allowed the character involved to remain human rather than a gimmick. Additionally, writers revised jokes involving mental health references and religious stereotypes, when feedback revealed that the emotional cost outweighed comedic value. Instead of promoting sanitized content, they chose intelligence over cruelty. This rerouting of humor demonstrates that comedy can evolve without eliminating laughter. Reshoots cost money, delayed schedules, and required extra labor. Yet the production accepted that long-term social impact was more important than convenience. This was relatively uncommon in sitcom culture at the time, where most shows avoided ethical rewrites unless required by censors. The Golden Girls did it voluntarily. Because of these adjustments, fans from multiple communities have later thanked the show publicly for humor that nudged culture forward rather than backwards. A real off-camera skill that changed set. Etiquette and became industry practice. Among the 4 stars, Betty White was uniquely known for interacting with studio audiences between takes, something not all actors were comfortable doing. According to interviews shared by B. Arthur's son, Matthew Sachs, Betty would often walk up to the audience, chat, entertain them, and maintain warmth whenever filming paused. This was not part of network direction or promotional routine, but a personal habit rooted in her decades of experience hosting game shows and performing in live formats. The effect was noticeable. Audiences stayed energized, reacted more naturally to punchlines, and felt part of the comedic rhythm rather than passive spectators. This created a performance loop where audience warmth improved comedic timing, which then improved audience energy further. Although sitcoms had long employed professional warm-up comedians, Betty's personal approach blurred the line between performer and morale builder. While it did not become an official Hollywood rule, her method is now referenced in discussions about how star-driven energy can elevate multi-camera comedy. Her off-camera charm mirrored Rose's kindness and strengthened the show's emotional aura in ways rarely discussed publicly. A secret philanthropic contribution made under anonymous identity. B. Arthur became an icon for her sharp comedic strength, feminist presence, and command of dialogue, but she also practiced private philanthropy that remained undisclosed until after her passing. In 2016, it was revealed that she donated $300,000 in her will to the Ali Forney Center, a New York-based LGBTQ youth homelessness organization. The contribution directly funded what would later become the B. Arthur Residence, a long-term supportive housing building. This act surprised many fans because Arthur rarely discussed charitable giving in interviews. Her advocacy aligned with causes she supported publicly during the AIDS crisis and through theater activism. Yet she rejected publicity as a condition for service. The donation matched values represented in Dorothy Zbornak's on-screen personality: justice, empathy, and moral courage. Today, her legacy lives not only on television, but in a physical sanctuary protecting marginalized young people. Why one actress demanded script tweaks based on psychological research. The episode 72 Hours is widely recognized as one of the most groundbreaking sitcom episodes about HIV stigma. It featured Rose confronting the possibility of infection through a blood transfusion, a storyline chosen specifically to challenge assumptions and moral judgments surrounding the epidemic. Writers based parts of the emotional foundation on real family experiences, most notably from co-writer Tracy Gamble, whose mother faced a similar medical scare. Medical historians and media scholars have since analyzed the episode, noting how it intentionally dismantled misconceptions and applied emotional realism rather than shock humor. Betty White approached the scenes with controlled vulnerability, ensuring Rose did not become a caricature or fear-based punchline. Decades later, the episode continues to be used in academic, medical, and advocacy discussions, demonstrating that sitcoms can influence public empathy without abandoning humor. The production technique they introduced that later became standard TV practice. The iconic Golden Girls kitchen was not originally built for the show. It was a repurposed set from another sitcom, It Takes Two, then redesigned and recolored to suggest Miami warmth. Only 3 chairs were placed at the kitchen table due to space and camera needs, which forced directors to creatively stage group scenes so that all 4 women remained visible. This is why one character was often positioned leaning on the counter or entering through the side doorway. The visual choice, paired with a medium-wide shot style, built psychological intimacy and established the kitchen as the emotional core rather than the living room. Later sitcoms adopted similar ensemble layouts, proving that the Golden Girls influenced visual grammar without inventing it outright. A wardrobe detail that symbolized a cast member's personal healing process. Blanche Devereaux's wardrobe did more than sparkle on screen. It helped rewrite how television dressed older women. Fans know the trivia by now. Rue McClanahan negotiated a clause in her contract that allowed her to keep every outfit Blanche wore, from the slinky nightgowns fans nicknamed Deverobes to tailored suits and glittering gowns. That clause is confirmed in multiple retrospectives and even fan wikis, which note that she filled closets with Blanche's clothing after the series wrapped. Fashion bloggers and Golden Girls costume analysts have gone further, treating Blanche's robes and kimonos as visual storytelling. In essays on sites like Golden Girls Fashion Corner and So80s, writers break down how the flowing, colorful pieces telegraph confidence and softness all at once. Rather than hide aging, the garments frame it as glamorous. Viewers, especially women who grew up told that style belonged to the young, saw in Blanche's silk layers a kind of reclamation. Clothes became armor, celebration, and permission. There is no public interview where Rue explicitly says that a specific turquoise robe healed a specific wound, so any literal healing process is an interpretation rather than a documented fact. But when fans and critics talk about how Blanche's wardrobe helped them feel better about their own bodies or aging, they are describing a genuine emotional impact. The detail that Rue insisted on keeping those clothes for herself completes the circle. What started as costume evolved into a personal archive, a tangible record of a character and an actress who refused to fade into the background. In that sense, Blanche's wardrobe really did symbolize healing, not of a surgical scar or a single event, but of a broader cultural injury that said women of a certain age should disappear. How the most popular running gag was never planned in the original scripts. The St. Olaf storyline became one of the most recognizable running gags in the Golden Girls. Yet, it was not originally mapped out as a long-term comedic device. In early episodes, Rose was written simply as kind, literal, and optimistic. But once writers introduced her childhood town anecdotes, they found that audiences reacted strongly to the absurdity mixed with sincerity. Rather than portraying Rose as unintelligent, Betty White insisted that Rose's naivety be rooted in genuine belief and lived experience, which preserved dignity while maintaining humor. Over time, the writers developed internal world-building rules that mirrored fairy tale logic, allowing St. Olaf to function like a fictional satire town filled with unusual customs and surreal historical facts. This made Rose's stories feel increasingly iconic and emotionally connected to episode themes. The gag became so popular that viewers began quoting St. Olaf lore like mythological canon, proving that what began as an improvisational comedic experiment evolved into one of television's most memorable storytelling formats. The story behind an improvised line that became a trademark, quote. Although the Golden Girls relied heavily on scripted dialogue, one of Dorothy Zbornak's most quoted comedic moments emerged from a real-time delivery choice, rather than strict line reading. B. Arthur approached performance with stage training discipline and believed that comedic timing should flow naturally with audience energy. In one scene involving Rose's bizarre explanation of a St. Olaf tradition, B altered her response, pacing, and tone, which unexpectedly triggered louder audience laughter. While the words were still from the original script, the studied sarcasm in her voice created an instant classic moment, frequently replayed in modern fan compilations. Entertainment publications later highlighted this scene among Belle Arthur's most definitive comedic examples, showing how emotional timing can transform a simple rebuttal into a fan-favorite punchline, the prop that was more valuable than the audience ever knew. Sofia Petrillo's iconic bamboo-handled purse is one of the most memorable props in sitcom history, and was used in nearly every scene featuring the character. Many fans believed it was a joke accessory, but its importance extended beyond costume design. Estelle Getty, who portrayed Sofia, found comfort in character grounding in the purse, and reports reveal that she used it as a physical reference tool as she transitioned into Sofia's personality. The purse even appeared in moments where logic suggested she had no reason to carry it, becoming symbolic of her life experience and survival mentality. Later interviews and trivia sources confirmed that the bag became part of Estelle Getty's character identity and contributed to audience attachment. Today, Sofia's purse is discussed among the most culturally recognizable props in television history, a quiet collaboration with medical advocacy groups hidden from viewers. The Golden Girls addressed sensitive medical and public health topics at a time when most sitcoms avoided them. The HIV-themed episode, 72 Hours, remains one of the most studied television portrayals of stigma and fear, especially since it featured Rose, the least expected character, undergoing an HIV test. The writers consulted real medical and advocacy narratives to ensure accuracy and emotional respect. The episode dismantled myths and normalized empathy through dialogue and learning moments. Additionally, Estelle Getty later connected with dementia awareness efforts after her personal diagnosis, and is publicly remembered by the Lewy Body Dementia Association as an advocate whose illness raised awareness long after the show ended. These partnerships and influences existed privately, demonstrating how the show blended entertainment, education, and social responsibility, a musical element with deep cultural reference missed by most fans. The Golden Girls theme song, "Thank You for Being a Friend," became one of the most beloved television musical introductions. But many viewers do not know that it was originally recorded by Andrew Gold in 1978, years before the sitcom debuted. When producers selected the song, they intentionally chose a track that centered on emotional loyalty rather than comedy, reinforcing that the show was anchored by friendship rather than age-based stereotypes. Cynthia Fee recorded the version used for the series, giving it a gentle, comforting tone that resonated across generations. The song eventually became a cultural anthem at memorials, celebrations, drag performances, and friendship tributes, demonstrating that it transcended the show and became a universal symbol of lifelong companionship. A filming tradition. They maintained to honor personal values and end each week. While The Golden Girls was often celebrated for on-screen friendship, there was also a weekly off-camera ritual that helped maintain harmony. Several retrospective interviews describe that cast members frequently ended work weeks by sharing small treats or sitting together informally after filming, rather than immediately leaving set. This mirrored the cheesecake tradition in the show, symbolizing shared closure and emotional reset. Although the cast had significant personality differences, they retained a culture of professional respect, which helped keep the show stable across 7 seasons. Modern retrospectives state that they valued gratitude and connection at the end of each taping cycle, which may have strengthened the warm tone audiences still recognize today. Looking back, The Golden Girls was never just a sitcom about aging friends trading witty remarks over dessert. It was a layered collaboration built on empathy, conviction, rights advocacy, and purpose disguised as humor. The cast understood their influence, and they used it with intentional gentleness, shielding personal pain while gifting audiences laughter that still heals. Their private decisions, unpublicized sacrifices, and ethical boundaries produced a legacy many shows still attempt to imitate. In a world where entertainment often prioritizes ratings over meaning, they proved that courage and compassion can coexist with comedy. The truths behind their journey remind us that greatness is rarely loud, and history is sometimes written only by those who live it, not by those who report it.